This video is going to review the expectations for the thesis statement of the English 101 Unit 3 Summary Response Paper. So the thesis is going to be the final element of your introductory paragraph on both the summary response planner and then in the essay itself. So a thesis statement must always state the topic of the paper, and it should preview the major points that are going to be made. So for this particular thesis, our topic is going to be about AI and learning. And then if you're going to do 4 response points, you would have your 2 reasons you agree and your 2 reasons you disagree. But keep in mind, as you work on your thesis statement, you have to have a thesis that matches what you write in your planner. So if you do the 2 and 2 format, then your thesis would have the 2 points of agreement, the 2 points of disagreement. Likewise, if you're only going to do 3 response paragraphs, then your thesis should match those response paragraphs, whether it's 2 disagree, 1 agree, or 2 points of agreement and 1 point of disagreement. So your thesis has to preview what those response points are going to be. All right. So when you think about it as a preview statement, I think that's going to make it much easier for you to construct your thesis. So keep in mind, you do not want to write your thesis statement until you have already planned out your responses. Okay, don't try to write the thesis ahead of time, but write the thesis once you've already planned those responses out. So on the planner, you will notice that under the introduction where it says the thesis statement, it reminds you it's the last sentence of this paragraph, and depending on how many response points you're going to do, it's going to have 5 pieces of information. Now, remember what I told you previously in class. If you are not going to do 4 points of response, then don't do 4 points of response. But if you change the order of this in any way, shape, or form, make sure your thesis is in the same order as your response. So my planner is going to be 2 points of agreement followed by 2 points of disagreement. So when I write my thesis, I want to put my information in that exact same order. But let's say you disagree with Wexler's article. That's your main thing, is you want to disagree with what she says. So you're going to have 2 points of disagreement, and then maybe you're going to have 1 point where you kind of agree with her. And then let's say you're only going to do 3 responses. So if I were to modify my planner like this, I would then need to make sure my thesis follows this same order. What am I going to disagree with? What am I agreeing with? So that's the first thing to keep in mind when you write your thesis, is put the points in the same order as they are in your response paragraphs. Now, let's take a look at the sample essay in the course. So here's the sample essay, and when I scroll down to the introductory paragraph, I can see that the thesis is here in green font, okay? And the note says the thesis is the last sentence of the introduction, and it shares an overview of the student's response. So this particular thesis begins with the opening, while the article is mostly informative. So this is speaking to the purpose of the article. You do not necessarily have to include the purpose of the article in your thesis statement. Why? Because you're going to include the purpose of the article in your summary. So if I was writing this thesis, I'm going to go ahead and annotate this a little bit. I would actually not start with the author's purpose, because I know I'm going to put that in my summary. I would begin with the first person point of view, the I statement, because keep in mind, a response is your point of view. It's why you agree or disagree with the author. It's going to include your personal examples. So I agree with the author's insinuations that we are moving into an age of technological control and power, accepting national security monitoring without fear, and potentially ignoring the dangers that increasing technology may bring to society. So when I read this particular response, the first thing that I notice is that all 3 points are in agreement. Now keep in mind, I want to see both sides with your paper, but with this particular sample, all 3 points are in agreement. And then there are 3 reasons: an age of control and power, national security monitoring, and then potentially ignoring the dangers. So this particular student agrees with three main points that the author is making in this article, A Surveillance Society. So if I were to scroll down and continue looking, Americans can't survive without their technology. So that is the first topic sentence of the first response paragraph. So if I go back up to the thesis, technological control and power. That's another way of saying Americans can't live without their technology. Then if I go down to the second paragraph, Americans don't care about personal liberties as much as they say they do. So it's this idea of security versus personal liberties. So again, if I go back up to the thesis, they accept security monitoring without fear. There's our next idea. And then finally, in the last response, unknown. Americans should be aware that new technology can open the doors to new peril. And this idea of unknown dangers, right? So the topic sentence matches the header. And then if we go up back to the thesis again, previewing, we're potentially ignoring the dangers. So essentially, your thesis is going to be a one-sentence summary of your response points. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you construct your thesis, or two things to keep in mind. Write your thesis at the end, make sure it's in first-person point of view, and then a third major point of the thesis, put it in the same order as your paper. And make sure you are using words and phrases that are all synonymous with one another. So I don't want to see the exact same wording in the thesis that I see in your header, that I see in your topic sentence. You can express the same idea, but use different terminology. So as you begin working on your planner, make sure you write a really effective preview thesis statement. Thank you.